Do not harm birds, subtitle, or be cursed. So when it comes to literature, remember this. Whenever there is a bird, it is not just a bird. No, it stands for, it stands for some quality, all right? Whether it can be spiritual or kind of uh, writing poetry itself, right? That's the first section and the second section. Third section, remember, if someone kills a bird in a piece of literature, a character kills a bird, that killing is kind of a curse for that character. So killing a bird is a curse or considered a curse in any piece of literature. It's a kind of a theme or a kind of motive, right? So let's go and check, or a kind of an, I would say, from Northrop Frye, the archetypal critics point of view, an archetype, a theme that comes again and again in literature. Let's go. And when we think of that, we think of the Romantic poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge and his poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, the opening poem in Coleridge and Wordsworth Poetry Collection, 1798, Lyrical Ballads. So what happens? So initially, the bird, of course, not generally, the bird Albatross is considered a bird of good omen. So look at this, so these lines. So what happens? We have the mariner, and there are 200 sailors with him. Now their ship is stuck in ice. They can't move, and they're bothered about that. I think they are stuck in South Pole. At that time, a bird comes, and it's a good omen. So let's read the lines. At length did cross an albatross, through the fog it came. Now you can actually associate albatross with the dove we saw in the previous section. Dove represents, dove is a Christian symbol, and dove represents the Holy Spirit. Here, albatross is more a bird of good omen and kind of a Christian soul, like a dove, the Holy Spirit. Similar way, at length did cross an albatross, through the fog it came, as if it had been a Christian soul. We hailed it in God's name. So far, so good. Then what it does, it ate the food it never had eat, and round it flew. The ice did split with the thunder fit. So since it's a good omen, now the ice which has been frozen and the ship is stuck, but now the ice did split, and now there is a relief, and the ship has started moving. The helmsman steered us through. The trouble is over. So when the poem starts, Coleridge makes use of the established symbol. In the sense, albatross, a bird of good omen. But in the later part of the poem, or in the later part of section 1 or part 1, it turns into something else. So here is a voice. God save thee, ancient mariner. So there's a voice which says, mariner, you are going to do something nasty, beware. From the fires that plague thee us, why lookst thou so? So what happened? Something came over, this guy, the ancient mariner. So what he did, with my crossbow, the voice switched to his point of view. He says, with my crossbow, I shot the albatross. So this is how he kills albatross. There is no reason. We don't know why he did that. It's not told in the poem, but something came over him. He shot the bird, which was considered a good omen. Now a curse upon him and also the entire crew. For some time the crew condemned his act, but later the crew of sailors, they also said, okay, what you did was good. Then they were also cursed, and all the 200 sailors die except him, because he has to live life and death, a kind of a torture. And that's what happens to the ancient mariner. And then comes that famous scene at the end of part 1 of this poem. An albatross around one's neck. Now, this phrase has entered the English language. It's an idiom. When we say an albatross around one's neck, it's kind of a curse, a constant torture, or something that has been troubling someone. So what happens? The soldiers, the sailors, they're sick of this ancient mariner because of his act, the cruel act of killing the good Omen. Now something bad has happened. Again, the ship is struck. Now it's stuck in ice. Now there's no food, and of course, the famous words from this poem: water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. They are thirsty, they are hungry, they are desperate to move from this place, but there is no albatross now. So what they do, this is what they do. Oh, well a day, what evil looks had I from old and young. Instead of the cross, the albatross around my neck was hung. So what happens? The ancient mariner was wearing a cross around his neck, but the sailors feel you do not deserve that. You can't wear this cross, which is holy, but you committed a crime. So you don't deserve this cross. They remove the cross from his neck, and in that place, what they do, they hung, and the albatross he killed. So it's more of his sin. So here it assumes another symbolic meaning. Earlier, albatross, a bird of good omen. Now, albatross attains a symbolic value in literature because of Coleridge. So in literature, when we say albatross, albatross is a symbol of guilt, or symbol of pain, or symbol of one's sin. And that's what it represents now. All right, so I'll go. But anyway, his curse was lifted in the later part of the poem when he blesses water snakes. When he blessed water snakes, unknowingly, involuntarily, then something happened. The curse was lifted. In the sense, he understood the value of a life at the end of the poem, or at the end of the journey. Then the curse was lifted. So the earlier part of the poem, he committed a sin. In the later part of the poem, he understood a value of a life, any life for that matter, whether it's a bird or a water snake. So his curse was lifted, but he was given a job, in the sense he has to tell his tale to people so that he could wash off his sin. So he goes ashore, and he was saved by a hermit and 2 people. Then he saw 3 wedding guests going to a wedding, and he stops one, and he started telling his tale to that wedding guest. And that's how the poem starts initially. And now let's look at Thomas Hardy, the Victorian poet, or the modern poet as well as novelist. And this is by Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy says, we are all ancient mariners. In the sense, all storytellers are ancient mariners. Why? Because the ancient mariner has a tale to tell. And there are wedding guests, they are going to the wedding, they are in a hurry. But the ancient mariner stops the wedding guest, one of the wedding guests, and he tells his tale. Because he thinks his tale has more power and it can change the life of that particular wedding guest. Similar way, we literature students or storytellers, we have something to tell to others. And unless we have something solid, we can't stop a wedding guest because people are in a hurry. So that's what the entire quote is about. So let's read. A story must be exceptional enough to justify its telling, right? So there should be something in a story, or else, we don't take others' time or waste others' time to tell a tale. So we tale tellers are all ancient mariners, and none of us is warranted in stopping wedding guests. In other words, the hurrying public unless he has something more unusual to relate than the ordinary experience of every average man and woman. So if you want to write a story, that should be something different, even I would say extraordinary ordinariness in human life. So you should show something that we have never seen before or understood before. So yeah, Hardy was inspired by ancient mariner, and we should also. I'll go to the next one. As I told you before, when it comes to literature, killing a bird is a kind of a bad omen, and it's kind of an archetype, a theme that comes again and again. Let's go to the Russian writer Anton Chekhov and his play, The Seagull. So what happens in this play? So you have the character Konstantin, 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 who wants to be a playwright, but he is not a successful one. He's a failure. He writes stories, but it's not successful. He tries to put on plays, not successful. And even in love, he is not successful because he is in love with Nina, an actress. But Nina is in love with someone else, another writer. Even they stay together, and she had a baby, and the baby died. And opening scene, or in the opening of the play, Constantine gave her an odd gift. I mean, a dead seagull. So this is the dialogue. Constantine, I was base enough today to kill this gull. I laid at your feet as if she were a goddess, and he is sacrificing her at her feet, all his love. But it's a very strange sacrifice, right? So he is presenting her with a gull. But he was very much aware that it was a base act, a mean act to kill a bird. But he did that. He didn't know why or how, but he did that. It's like the ancient mariner. And this is kind of a foreshadowing in literature that he's also going to die. There is no helping. So Nina asks, what is happening to you? And action. She picks up the gull and stands looking at it. And Constantine, after a pause, so shall I soon end my own life. So Nina doesn't appreciate, doesn't, give back his love. Nina is more after someone else. So Constantine is adamant in love, so he doesn't want to move on in his life. So he's stuck in life. It's like the ship in ancient mariner. So he says, so shall I soon end my own life. So 2 years pass by. After 2 years, again he meets Nina. Now Nina has given birth to a baby which died, and the lover, he deserted her. Now Nina is back. She still believes she could be a successful an actress, but that doesn't happen. But because of his despair, Constantine shoots himself and he dies. So that's the end of The Seagull, a tragic one, right? But anyway, what we focus on is that killing a bird is a sin in literature, and killing a bird is a bad omen. And similar theme we can find in the Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen, who is considered the modern, the father of modern drama. So here is a play, The Wild Duck. So what happens in Wild Duck? Again, we have a different character here. So we have Greger's Whirl, G-R-E-G-E-R-S, Greger's Whirl, W-E-R-L-E. Greger's Whirl. What's his problem? Greger's Whirl's problem, he has some compulsion, in the sense he cannot but tell truth. I mean, he cannot lie. That's his problem. But the thing is, when he tells the truth, he also troubles people, and he doesn't bother about the consequences. So because of his truth telling, people die. And he also destroys a family. So that's what happens in this play, The Wild Duck. So in the beginning of the play, what happens? Grihar's world actually shot at a wild duck which escaped, which was saved by a girl called, or the girl's family. And name of the girl, Hedwig, Heddig, Hedwig. And she is very fond of that bird which is wounded by Grihar's ball. So Grihar's ball came back to the town, and he had a friend called Halmer, Hjalmar, classmate, former classmate or schoolmate. Grihar's ball goes to his house and he even stays there. And he knows some truth. The truth is that Grihar's world's father's maid named Gina, Gina. Now that former maid is now the wife of his friend Halmer. But there is a secret in the sense Gina had an affair with the Grihar's world's father, and she had a child, and the child is Hedwig. But he possessed this knowledge. He could have avoided that, avoided telling this to the family. But he thinks a family cannot be, found on, can be based on lies. So he tells the truth to Halmer. Halmer doesn't love Hedwig, and the problem starts. In the meantime, Hedwig, she thinks, okay, our Grihor world says to Hedwig, see, if you sacrifice your wild duck, because once the father said, I'm going to kill that wild duck. I don't like that wild duck, but she's fond of that wild duck. She wants to win back his love, father's love. It's like Shakespeare's King Lear and Cordelia. So it's like the tragic one, King Lear and Cordelia. So at the end of the play, Cordelia dies, and we know the pain of King Lear. Similar thing happens here. So Hedwig, the girl, allows her grandfather to shoot the wild duck because grandfather thinks he was a hunter. So now sometimes he kills the animals in the loft. So that's what happens. And people think, okay, there's some shooting going on. But what happens at the end of the play, Hedwig, she commits suicide by shooting herself to death. So that's what happens. And she was under the impression, okay, I have nothing to lose now because my father no longer loves me. What is there for me to live? So this is what happens. Helmer asks, shoot the wild duck, what for? Gerhards. She wanted to sacrifice to you the best thing she had in the world because she thought then you would have to love her again. But that doesn't happen. So this is the end. Helmer, Gina, and Gregors drag Hedwig into the studio. Her right hand hangs down and her fingers curve tightly around the pistol. So now you can understand. So this is how, when we read literature, how do we understand that something is an archetype? We should understand the pattern. Now we can understand killing a bird is no longer a simple act in any piece of literature. So this is how it acquired some significance, and it turns into a symbol. Now, the bird is not just a bird here. It's a symbol of love or symbol of sacrifice or kind of misunderstanding, right? So it carries connotation. So this is how we can interpret any symbol in literature. So we'll go to the next one. So when we read Henrik Ibsen, the playwright who inspired the Irish playwright and Nobel laureate Bernard Shaw, and also he inspired Arthur Miller, the American playwright known for Death of a Salesman. So he inspired a lot of people and known for his social values, known for addressing social problems. So this is his another famous work, An Enemy of the People. I like this work, especially for the last words by Dr. Stockmann. So what happens here is a doctor, Dr. Stockmann, Stockmann, Dr. Stockmann, a kind of an inspector or an official in a town. So what happens, the town's economy is based on spas or baths in that town. But the doctor finds out that the water in the spa or the bath is contaminated. So he wants to report this, or he wants to announce to the world that the bath is contaminated. But people are angry because they don't want the truth, because the truth will destroy their livelihood. So they are against Dr. Stockmann. But Stockmann is more bothered about loss of lives. People may die because of this contaminated water. But what happens, the entire town, ostracizes this man, and they torture his family and him and all the problems. But Stockmann stands his ground. And this is towards the end of the play. He says, the strongest man in the world is the one who stands most alone. So I stand for truth, right? So maybe, if you look at it, the plays of Henry Gibson, it's more about truth, facing the truth or telling the truth, which kills a family, or standing for truth. And there is another word called brand, B-R-A-N-D. Brand means fire in Norwegian. So it talks about a priest who is known for his adamant nature, a priest who wants to lead people to the path of God, path of spirituality. But his problem, he forgets one thing that is essential to religion, that is to love other people. So he forgets that. He forgets to love his own family, his wife, his dead child, and everything. Ultimately, he becomes a desperate soul without love. So that's the work is about. We'll go to the next one. So let's end this section with understanding. Say earlier, you might have looked at Ravana from the epic Ramayana. So in Ramayana, now you can associate the killing of a bird with that archetype, a curse. So we are aware Ravana now abducted or kidnapped Sita, and he was attacked by a bird, Jadayu. And what happened? Jadayu is a big bird, very strong one, and it fought with Ravana. Ravana initially struggled, but he had a sword, Chandrahasa, and with that sword, he just cut off the wings of that bird, Jadayu. It's like the ancient mariner, right? Maybe ancient mariner came much later. So now we can understand killing a bird is definitely an archetype which is there in the myth, is there in the epic, and in literature. So this is how we identify, okay, this is an archetype, or this is a symbol, right? And this is what happens, right? So what happens, Jadayu, which is about to die, right, meets Rama and Lakshman, and it says to Rama and Lakshman, your wife is abducted by the king Ravana, so go south and find your wife. And that's how they. But anyway, we can, in Tamil Nadu, we look at Ravana as also a kind of an epic hero himself. So the fall of his fall is more of his hubris, maybe we can say. So thus fell the epic hero, because he harmed a bird, right? And there is an alternative version to that story, the Ramayana. So we have a counter discourse by Pulavar Kulandai, Tamil poet, who wrote the same epic from Ravana's point of view, Ravana Kavyam, which was banned when the book was published. It was banned. Then now it's in circulation, we can read. So Pulavar Kulandai's Ravana Kavyam, it's from Ravana's perspective. Why he abducted Sita, why he fought against Rama. So that's the work is about. We'll go to the next section. before that, so if you don't kill birds, you can save birds. So save birds and save thy spirit. Let's end this section with the short story by the American writer Sarah Owen Jewett. Sarah, O-R-N-E, Owen, Jewett, J-E-W-E-T-T. And here is a short story. A white heron. A white heron, I think this short story was introduced to me by a student while I was teaching at the University of Madras, Cherisha Agnes. So she introduced this short story to me, and she actually told the entire story to me. So what happens, here is a girl, Sylvia, in this story. She's poor and she's living with her grandma, and there comes a stranger, a hunter, who is after a white heron, which is rare. So he wants to kill the heron and he wants to stuff that bird and put it in his collection. So that's his aim. But he can't find any bird. He can't sight any bird. And now she stays with the grandmother as a lodger, and he speaks with Sylvia, and Sylvia understands, okay, and she tries to impress that stranger. But what happens? Yes, she goes in search of something, but a tree invites her. She climbs up the tree and she reaches the top of the tree, which once you see in the screen now on the cover page of that work. At the top of the tree, she looks at the entire valley, and something happens to her. And she also looks at a nest, and there are birds, babies, and there is a white heron. Now she loves that family and she understands something, the little girl. And the little girl comes back and the stranger asks her, today too, I couldn't find any white heron. Did you spot any? And it's a kind of a crisis. She needs money, $10. The stranger offers $10 for the information. And she can get the $10. She can get his friendship. Maybe her grandmother can be happy with the $10 money. But she decides not to tell the location. And that's her decision. So that's what we look at here. She remembers how the white heron came flying through the golden air. And Sylvia cannot speak. She cannot tell the heron's secret and give its life away. So this is a reversal of the theme we have been looking at, killing a bird, but saving a bird. Since she saved a bird and its family, she feels alive. Okay, I did something good, and that saves her. And she's more happy with that feeling than the money.